In this video I want to discuss the Model 100 from Keyboardio. I will discuss the hardware, to some extent also the software capabilities, how to program the keyboard. I will discuss the keywell design they arranged and also the quality of the hardware as such, and what I like about the keyboard and what I find was a design decision which was less good. So let's start with the hardware as such, the build quality of the keyboard. When you get the keyboard, it's quite nice. It comes with a case. Just let me show you the case. It comes with a case, and you have compartments in the case to have each half of the keyboard, and then here you have a little bit place for accessories. I will show you the accessories in a minute. The keyboard quality as such is really nice. The keyboard is available with walnut and also available with maple. The construction as such is really nice. It is sturdy, it is robust, everything looks fine, so there's nothing to complain about from that side. When you now see here, you have a backlighted keyboard. Here I have a rainbow effect, and you can have nice patterns, or you can have functional lighting to show different layers and so on. So you have different options. You can connect the keyboard halves together in the middle, and for that you have a very short cable which you can attach between the two halves, and then you also have a guide which attaches here to the underside, which allows you to then slide the two halves together, and you have one keyboard basically. And that's quite a good possibility to use that keyboard because of the angular layout of the columnar staggered rows, of the columnar stagger of the columns. You already have a quite natural position, and when you look here from the F to J, that is already, you can measure it. It's now a little bit more than 15 centimeters. Here's 1 centimeter, so it's about 14 centimeters from the F to the J from the home row positions. That is already a nice distance, much closer than on a standard keyboard. And like I said, the angle of the keyboard is nice as such. I personally prefer to have the keyboard halves a little bit further away, maybe something like that. So with a distance of a few centimeters, 5-6 centimeters. And for that you get a long cable, and in my opinion this is really bad. So you see here, that's a cable of about 1 meter, and who wants to have the keyboard halves 1 meter apart from each other? So that is way too long. For that reason I bought an extra cable online, which I needed to search for. Was not so easy to find the right cable which is the right length and everything. And here you see a nice braided cable. I think Keyboardio should have included a cable like that. And if people want to have a super long cable, okay, they could have bought one, or maybe Keyboardio could have also supplied a bit longer cable, but you see here that is a really bad quality with the kinks, so it's not something you want to have on your desk, so you don't know what to do with a cable, and it's not a good fit for a keyboard with that price. You can also use the keyboard in a tented position. For that, Keyboardio supplies this base, and you see the base has a different height under the different angles, and that means depending on how you rotate this base, you can determine a little bit in which direction the keyboard should be tilted. But you see, you add quite a bit of height, and that is a general problem with most tenting solutions. So here you attach this base with a screw which is also supplied to the bottom, and then you have the tented solution. But then you are very high on the table, and the keyboard as such is already quite high. So when you see the keyboard is quite thick, so the keyboard itself is 2.5 centimeters almost, and then from the top of the keycaps, when you look here, it's something about 4 centimeters or something like that. So that's relatively high, and typically you want to have the keyboard relatively low. So depending on your chair and on your table, you should adjust the chair and or the table height in such a way that your arms do not need to be angled up, but that they are flat or slightly angled down. And that is a bit harder to achieve with that keyboard. So flatter keyboards are in general easier to find a good fit for most desks. So that is a disadvantage of that keyboard, which I personally find it a major disadvantage, that the height is on the high side. It's not super high, but it's on the high side. The keycaps which are provided with the keyboard are custom keycaps. You can get those either with a character layout, or you can get those also with just an option that the light shines through, but all keycaps are looking the same. I have chosen a QWERTY keycaps, although I have my own custom layout, but I want to have that compatible with a standard keyboard anyways, and on a standard keyboard on a laptop you typically cannot or don't want to change the keycaps easily. So I'm accustomed to this QWERTY layout, and I know that for me the E key, for example, is where normally the D letter is, and so on. So I just know where the position is. So that is not a downside. That's just a decision I made to purchase those keycaps. But of course you can purchase the blank keycaps as well. There are also translucent keycaps, which I find personally are looking really ugly, but some people like it. Then let's have a look at the keycaps as such. The keycaps as such are sculpted. So you see here, when I turn the keyboard, you see that the keys are sculpted in such a way that you almost have some sort of a key whale. So that is a really nice idea or a nice implementation of a key whale. So I am not sure if a key whale design is the best design. It has some advantages, it has some disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is that in key whale designs you typically cannot change the switches, so they are typically not hot swappable. This keyboard has a flat PCB, and then only the keycaps create this key whale. It doesn't allow you to get the keys closer, but the basic shape of a key whale is approximated here, and I think that is really nice. So when you look at the keycaps, you see you have each individual key has a shape, a U shape. So, and that means when you have the finger in the home position and then you move one of the fingers along the column, you see here that the fingers are very much guided in this U shape of the keycaps. So a very nice design. So you almost have no choice to go somewhere else with your fingers, and it's very natural and really nice. Also you have some stagger, columnar stagger, so the pinky is a little bit lower than the other keys. And I personally find the stagger very natural for my hand. So that is something which I think was solved very well. When you look at how the different keys are reachable from the home position, I assume that you are touch typing, so with floating hands, not planted on the palm rest, not planting the hand on the palm rest, but touch typing with floating hands, and that you want to then reach all the keys from the home row position. Typically when I type, I have the fingers really floating. That allows a little bit of movement of the hand. For example, if you use the numbers, which I personally like to have a number row. You could also put it on layers, but I think the way to reach the numbers is quite easy, and it's faster to type the numbers than to switch to an extra layer. So I have been touch typing for 40 years, and I'm typing all the numbers and everything blind without any problems. So I personally prefer to have a number row. Then also the layout as such is nice, that you have from the home position you have the 4 keys, J to the semicolon, and on the other side mirrored as well from A to F. And then you have one column to the inner side and one column to the outer side. I personally think keyboards which have this grid are better than those who have less keys, because especially when you are typing not only English but also other languages, you often need some extra keys for umlauts or dead keys, for an accent and so on. So I personally think this is a good idea to have a slightly larger layout like this. When you look at how the different keys can be reached, so you see from the index finger it flows really nice, and you can reach all the keys nice in this column. The same for the middle finger. Also the ring finger and the pinky can reach all the keys very nicely. I was surprised, especially with the pinky. So you see here the shape of this keycap is such that your pinky is really guided into this position of the slash key or the question mark key, so that is extremely comfortable to type. So that is something I really appreciated, and I thought every keyboard should have a keycap like that, so that you're really guided to this position. So that is something I really like. Then let's talk about how can we reach the other keys which are not in the column. Here we see something different. So because each keycap has some U-shape form, and that means also the J and the H key, for example, have this U-shape. That means you get a bump here between those keys. So to type H, you need to lift up your finger, your index finger, and then go down on the H. You cannot just shift the finger to the side. So of course it's not really high, but I find it a little bit disturbing. And also when you, for example, to the Y, it's even more disturbing a little bit. You bump here into this corner of the key. So they should have made this side of the keycap lower or flat, and also on that side, so that you can more, or here it is not needed, but because you come here from the key, this keycap should be flattened on this side, so that you can easier enter the Y key. And the same for the H and for the N. For the N it's a little bit less of a problem, but the N key is quite a big stretch. So if you compare that to a standard layout, this distance is larger than on a standard keyboard. So that is a disadvantage of the columnar stagger, that it is often told that the keys are easier to reach, and that can never be the case. Of course, some keys will be easier to reach and it will be more logical and everything, but moving one key closer to another key means that other keys will move further away. So in this case, the N key moved further away from the position on a staggered standard keyboard. So and this profile of the keycaps is something which I do not like in this case. So they should have really changed that, and that is one of the reasons I prefer to type on a standard keyboard. So I'm using, for example, an UHK, a standard keyboard split, where you don't have this problem that you have such a large U shape that you have problems to get to the next key. When you look at this one, and the key to the right of the semicolon key, that is also really nice and easy to reach. And I personally have this as a layer key, as a layer switch. I use it in a one-shot form. This key, which is normally the shift key on a standard keyboard, is not really easy to reach, but that is also the case on any standard keyboard. So this is nothing special. It's okay. If you want to use the shift key in the standard position, you can do, and it's fine. Then let's talk about this inner row. You have an extra row with keys, and the question is, which finger do you want to use to type those keys? So for this key here on the side, printed with a butterfly, or on that side it's escape in the standard configuration, I personally find it best to use my thumb on this key, and that is not super comfortable, but it's quite good. So you could use it for a key. Escape is possibly fine, for example, for that position. I personally want to have escape in a better position, but it's okay. It's better than possibly than the standard position of the escape key, but yeah, maybe not. So here you can also get to the standard escape key position quite well. It's okay. Then those two keys on the top, two keys on top of them. Here's the question: if I want to use them with the index finger, that is a really long stretch, and I would surely not want to use that for touch typing, for characters and so on. And this key, of course, the same as well. I personally like to have a few extra keys which I can assign for mute or volume up and down, so media control, or I like also to have a print screen because I do a lot of screenshots. So I personally think it's nice to have some dedicated keys for quick macros and functions, whatever you like, regardless of the basic layout or the base layout for touch typing and navigation and so on. I use a navigation layer, of course, which you also can do and should do with the Keyboardio Model 100. But yeah, those keys are not usable on a daily basis for touch typing purposes. Now let's have a look at the thumb clusters. The thumb clusters are laid out in such a way that they follow the natural arc of the thumb. That is really nice. And also nice is that the thumb keys, or the keycaps, sorry, are rounded to the outside. So that makes it very natural to go from one key to the other. That is in contrast to those keys where it's harder to get to the next one. So here you should have removed this slightly higher part of the keycap, where here it is perfectly executed, that you really can follow the key very easily, this arc line. Then let's have a look about the position of those thumb keys. When you look at the position of those thumb keys, when I have my hand in the home row position, I typically would like to have the thumb just naturally falling on the area on space or between space and control. So it's not exactly on space for myself. And where your thumb key naturally falls is also depending on how you are angling and rotating the key. So if I use the J key, my index finger, as an anchor, and then I rotate the keyboard around this position, then you will see that the thumb, if I rotate it extremely in that direction, which is too far, of course, you would need to turn the hand like that, but at least to some extent. But then the thumb would fall on this key. If I rotate the keyboard in this direction, the thumb will be more close to the space key or somewhere in between. So also some people might prefer to have the thumb in natural position, close to the hand. Some might prefer it a little bit more to the outside. I don't think anybody wants to have the thumb as a natural position so far out. I guess typically you will just have the hand like that, so the thumb will be relatively close to the index finger. So if you have the J column from the home row position, the thumb key should, in my opinion, be roughly where the control key is, or a little bit more to the left. But that's of course depending also on the hand size. And for that reason, I personally think that having a fixed thumb cluster where the width of the thumb key is only one unit, one keycap unit, I think that is not a good design decision. I think it would be better to have a wider thumb key, which would allow different people to have exactly the perfect position, and they do not need to, or the natural position for the thumb, and they do not need to be very precise with the thumb. So the thumb, of course, is a strong key, and you can make use of it in a keyboard as well, but it is not meant basically to go in that direction that much. It's mostly meant to go in that direction. So pressing in that direction, I think personally that the thumb key or the thumb should not be used too much. You can use it quite a lot, but on some keyboards, and also here you have many thumb keys and you need to jump to different positions if you use the standard layout. I think that it's not the best possibility to use your thumb in a layout. Then let's discuss this key. This key you can press with a palm. So when I'm resting my hand, I do not touch this key. Some people find that they touch this key and accidentally trigger that key. That's not the case for myself, but for some people that is a problem. But what I do not like with this key, so I think the basic idea is really clever, that you say, okay, why not have a key here? You can activate with your palm, and some use that for to go to a specific layer, for example. That can work, but on the other side, I think it's not the best idea, because when you are typing like I'm typing here with floating hands, and you're typing like that, you can use all those fingers and you touch type on different keys. But to access this key, I need to turn my, here see from the side, so I need to make a kink here in my wrist to some extent, and I think that's really distracting the flow. So when you type tap with different keys, but you need to activate this key by changing this hand position to get a kink here. I think that key is still a good idea, but it should not be used for layer switching, in my opinion. At least not layers you are using during touch typing. If you are using it for a special layer, for whatever, for example, to switch to a game layer, that is a different thing. That can be, of course, a nice possibility, or you can assign other functions you like to that key. So finally, I also want to discuss the standard layout of this keyboard. So the standard layout has escape in this position, which is fair, it's okay. It's not super good, but you can use it. But what I personally found with a layout like that, where you have the modifiers on the thumb keys, and especially if you have modifiers spaced on two halves of the keyboard, for example, here you have Control, Command, that would be the Windows key, and Shift. If I want to have a combination of all those, how should I be able to press a combination? Control, Command, Shift. I have keyboard shortcuts on my standard keyboard which really use all those keys, Control, Command, Control, Windows and Shift. But how am I supposed to type that or to hold those with one hand? And then I would like to have the key I want to press, for example, a character like K, with the other hand, of course. But on that side, you see you have Shift is mirrored, but here you have the Windows key, and here you have the Alt key and Control. So you are missing some parts. So if you want to have a combination, so for example, all four keys, it's totally impossible to press those at the same time. So this is, I think, not a good design decision. I personally think also using the modifiers on a thumb in general is not the best idea. So I would use them in a different position, possibly in a home row mode, or I use now also not the home row mode, but shifted to the lower row, because I have in my layout only characters which I do not type very often on the lower row, so you have much less chance of missed triggers on the lower row, but it's still super easy to access. So I think that it's, for me, a better position than using the home row modes in the home row. In another video I will also tell why I do not use the shift in the standard positions of the keyboards, though that would be at those places, because I find them too awkward to reach. But I personally think using them in a home row mode is also not the best idea. I think layer switching for characters, so for touch typing quick, should be realized in the best case with a one-shot key, that you press the key, let go the key, and then type the character you want to have. So for example, if you want to touch type a capital F, I would hit Shift, let it go, and then with the other hand type the F key. And that is a quicker flow for touch typing than needing to hold the Shift key down, then pressing the F key, then releasing the key, and then letting go the Shift key. So that is a little bit disturbing in my opinion. Of course, I used to do that for many years before I created a custom layout, but when you are thinking about how to improve your typing experience, I would get away from shifting to layers by a hold key. I think that is not the best design decision. Of course you can do it, and many people use it, but there are quite some good reasons why you would like to use one-shot keys for that. In another video I will explain where I have my navigation layer, and that is in my case on the space key, which is then hold down. But that is a different case, because when you are navigating in a text and so on, you are not in the quick mode that you touch type with 100 words per minute or something like that, but then you are in a different mode mentally and you are much slower. You do not copy paste and move the cursor keys with a speed of 100 words per minute. That would be 500 key presses per minute. You don't do that. So for that reason, I think for a navigation layer, or how it's called in Colmac terms, for example, they call it often extended layer, where you possibly also have control copy, control C for copy, paste, and so on. There, I think a hold layer is quite perfect and can be used quite sensible. And I use the space key because I have that always literally under my thumbs. This will be discussed in another video. Finally, I want to give you a short overview of the possibilities you have with a software which is supplied with a Keyboardio Model 100. So that's called Chrysalis. It's a graphical user interface. You also can program the keyboard with based on the firmware, which is called Kaleidoscope. That's running on Arduino. I tried to do that, but the documentation was so lacking that it was not possible without too much time to get that going. So for me, it was only left to use the graphical user interface called Chrysalis. So you connect your keyboard to it. Takes a second, and then you can customize your keyboard layout. I will show you that in a second. You have also different options like updating the firmware of the keyboard and a few other changes you can make. One menu part is here well interesting. Those are the preferences. You can choose different keyboard layouts which are displayed, and here most important, you can make some basic changes in configurations of the keyboard itself. So what should be the default layer, default color scheme, LED timeout, things like that. You have some options to configure sticky keys with the timeout, double tap behavior, and if you want to have automatically modifier sticky or layer shift keys automatically sticky. So in my understanding, that means a one-shot key. So sometimes one-shot and sticky, the description is used for the same, the name is used for the same, but sometimes it's a little bit different what sticky key or one-shot key means. In Windows language, a sticky key is a one-shot key, but for other keyboards, sticky keys can sometimes have a different meaning. So if you want to be more precise, one-shot key is typically the better expression. You can configure space cadet. That means that you have parentheses when you tap a shift key, and when you hold it, the shift key, then you get the shift functions. You can configure the timeout for that as well. You can also configure some basic timings for the mouse keys. So integrated mouse navigation is on the keyboard. I did not use that because in the end I decided against keeping the Model 100 and I have sold it. Mainly because it's too large for my liking with a palm rest, where it does not allow me to have the keyboard closer to the border of the table to type comfortably with floating hands. That was the main reason, but also a few other reasons which I did not like in the end. The thumb cluster was also not perfect for myself, and also the sculpted keycaps with all the positives, like explained, also have some negatives, and I decided against keeping the Model 100. Let's go back to the layout editor. In the layout editor, you see here when you, for example, if I want to create my custom layout on the standard position of an A, I personally have the H key. So it would be nice if I could just take that key and drag it over. That is not possible. Here to assign the H character, I need to click on it, and then you click on this virtual layout of a standard keyboard, and now I have assigned the H key to that, and so on. You can configure every key you like. You also have different layers you can configure and change to the layers. Let's go back to the base layer, and I show you which options you have. So for example, in case you want to assign a modifier to a key, you can do that here. So you click on the key and then you click on what modifier you want to have. But if you want to have a combination, you need to choose that here. So it's a little bit I think not totally straightforward how to get multiple modifiers at the same time. Or for example, if that should be Control L, then you would add the control here and not here, because if you click here, you assign the control key. But otherwise, if you want to have it combined with control, you need to have the modifier from that menu. You can also assign secondary actions. That means if you have a key, so for example the K, when I tap it, it's a K, and if I hold it, it could be my Windows key, for example. So you could make basic home row modes. You cannot change the parameters for timing and so on here, but basically you could use it to realize home row modes. Or you can also use that to change to a layer. Here you can configure a color scheme for the keys, for all keys or for a single key. Here you can change if you want to shift or to lock or move to a layer. That's you would need to look in the documentation what is the difference. I don't go into the details here in that because, like I said, I did not dive too deep into the Model 100 adventure because in the end I decided it's not for me, but those are meaningful and you can make use of different ways to temporarily or continuously go to another layer. That is basically what you can do here. You can change the brightness. You have some media control keys you can assign, mouse control buttons, so wheel buttons left, right, and so on. You have a warp functions which moves the cursor quicker to a different part of the screen. It's a good idea, but you need to get used to it. So I did not really use the keyboard, so I did not try to use it, and of course you will use some, or you will lose some keys for that navigation, but the general idea is a good one, that you can quickly move your cursor to different positions on your screen. Then you have specific Mac keys, you have language keys. I don't have any idea what those mean, and those keys are not documented, so yeah, you basically cannot use those. You can assign macros, dynamic macros and macros. I don't know exactly what the difference is. I did not use macros. You can only, when you look here, create a macro, very basic stuff. So tap a key, hold a key, wait. And that's basically everything you can do. So not a real programming language. Other keyboards use own programming languages or allow you to have much more refined user-defined actions in a macro language. This is not the case with this keyboard. One shot, that is a possibility to define a key to cancel one-shot keys. Space Cadet and blank. Here blank is not still interesting. You can block a key, that it's not doing anything, or you can set it to transparent. That means that it is not active on this layer, but the layer you came from, the function will get passed to that layer where you came from. And you can also assign custom key code, but this is also not documented, and I don't know what it means. I hope this gave you a good idea of the Keyboardio Model 100. I think it can be an interesting keyboard for some people, but for myself, I think there are options which much better fit to my needs. If you are interested in learning more about other keyboards, or if you are interested to hear about my approach, how to assign or to create a custom layout, what is most important for ergonomic typing, then have a look at my other videos.